Guess who is back? It's Technicide, of course. And yes, I know it's been a long time since my last video. Some of you broke out the searchlight. Some of you were just checking your binoculars like, where is Technicide? But I got you. Sorry about the delay, but you know, it's been a rough year. Nonetheless, I'm here in this one to bring another exciting, informative, educational video. So we are looking at project management, and we're going to be zooming in on the BMED paper 2 2019 past paper, and we're looking specifically at question 5. In this video, we're going to be introduced to resource histogram as well as resource smoothing. So have you hit that subscribe button yet? Well, make sure you hit that subscribe button and let's get working on this question. Okay, so this is the question we're going to be working with for this video. It's question 5 from paper 2 of BMED U2 2019 paper, and it has to do with project management. So the question reads, the network shown in figure 3 represents a section of a project being undertaken by a subcontractor. The number of equipment, in this case mixers, required for each activity is also shown in figure 3. For example, 2E means 2 equipment. The subcontractor does not want to use more than 8 mixers on the job. However, the main contractor would like the job to be completed in 27 weeks to phase in his operations. So let's now go and explore the network. If you want to learn how to do calculations for a network, check my video in the iCard or in the description below. So we see our starting node, and it has some depictions telling you what each number is representing. You have the different activities and you have the finishing nodes here. Now, as with some question papers, you might come across a little bit of errors. However, go into the exam having a good grasp of the concept, and then when you see certain errors coming up, it will not phase you too much. It will not confuse you because you would have identified it as an error. I know that is a challenge, especially when you're under exam conditions, but just be able to identify the little errors and not let them throw you off. All right, so here we go. Looking at starting node here, we see top left labeled ES, top right EF, bottom left LS, bottom right LS again, and that is where the error is. So ES stands for early start, EF early finish, LS latest start, and that would mean where is LS bottom right should actually be LF for latest finish. Other things we need to identify about this diagram, we see this icon here, the symbol, and this down here is telling you that that is critical path. So you can easily identify the critical path for this activity, and it is A, C, G, H, all the way to the finish. So that is the critical path for this project. So now we've gotten all the information necessary, let's get into the question to see what we are required to do. So A of the question says, produce a bar chart and resource histogram to represent the latest start times for each activity in table 2. So what we're going to do, we want to basically highlight certain things that we see coming up. And I'm in AutoCAD, but I'm able to get around. I'm going to use, I need a color that will highlight. Let's use purple. Let's see if it comes up. So what I'm going to highlight is bar chart. I'm also going to highlight resource histogram. And another thing that I want to highlight, it says to represent latest start times for each activity. We need to highlight all of those. So first and foremost, what's a bar chart? It's basically a graph, as you know, that would show a relation between two things. Sometimes it has to do with a timeline and some other information. It can be used to show the relation between anything really. So for this question, we will be doing a bar chart to show the relation between the duration and the activities. Now let's look at the table. Table 2 gives us some information. First column, we have activity. Second column, duration. Third column, resources required. Fourth, earliest start times. Fifth, latest start times. And then the last column shows us the float. We're not getting to part B of the question as yet. We're going to be starting off with part A, producing a bar chart and resource histogram. Now what I'll be doing, I'll be creating a grid to help me to better be able to represent the graph as well as the resource histogram. So as soon as I get to the resource histogram, I'm going to be telling you what the resource histogram is. So I'm going to be drawing a grid and I'm going to be using 25. I don't want purple. Let me change this back to layer. So, and change this back to by layer as well. So 25 on the vertical, aka the Y. And on this part, I'm going to be doing 30. Now, chances are we may have to expand on the vertical. I don't will need to expand on the horizontal because the contractor does not want the project to exceed 27 weeks. And each line, each grid will represent 1 week. So I'll need to go beyond 30. But on the vertical, not so sure. So I'm going to be doing array. So I'm going to be using path array. So I select my object, then my path, and it gives me, because I already had the setting set here for 1 between each of the objects. Do it again. Select my object and select my path. And then I'm going to set this to 1 between. And there I have my grid. So I press enter. So now my grid is all set. I'm going to be now selecting every other line, making it a different color so that it's easier visually. And now I'm going to be labeling my Y aspect of it, which is representing the activities. Let me just move this over a little bit. Now let me just point out in the table, it's ordered by increasing early start. You notice 04 instead of the activity name. And so you recognize that it doesn't go A, B, C, D. However, for my diagram, I'm going to be going A, B, C, D according to the alphabetical order. Really shouldn't be an issue either way, whichever one you choose to do. Okay, so now for my bar chart, I have to label my x-axis to represent the number of weeks. And I'm going to be labeling every other line just so it's not crowded and confusing. So now I'm going to just change the layer back to text, to changing the layer to the text layer. Okay, next I'm going to be labeling the axes. So I'm just taking a random and labeling. So on the y-axis here, what is represented is the activity, and on the x-axis here, representing duration, and it's in, let's leave it in full caps, doesn't matter, representing weeks. Okay, it's a little bit hard to read, so let me go and change that. I'll let that stay. Okay, so now we're ready to do our bar chart. So we use our table and we see what we'll be putting on our bar chart is the duration for each activity. So I'm going to be selecting object here, selecting line, and then on my line that represents A, activity A, I'm going to be stretching it all the way to 4. The beauty about using AutoCAD is that it will tell you how long your line is. So you're looking at my tracking, you're seeing 4, so I know that's good. Let's look for activity B. Remember that the table is not necessarily in this order, so you have to make sure you're looking and putting in the correct number. So B, another error I saw on the paper is that in the table, the duration for B is 6, whereas on the diagram, the duration for B is 8. However, I'm going to be using the 6 that's in the table as the value. So again, I said, these are little things you have to look out for, but do not let them throw you off. Now, another key thing, we're not just going to put on B starting after A because it says latest start time. So we have to start from B's latest start time. So B's latest start time is 13. So we have to go on line 13. So this is 12, this is 13. And put B for a duration of 6. So just let your tracking help you. 6. So I'm just going to go ahead now and finish the others using latest start time as the key. Okay, so it's good practice now once you've done your work is to just go back and check to make sure that you've done it accurately. All right, so we can see that this is accurate. Now, one thing I like to do is to highlight the critical path so that we know that those remain unchanged. So it's A, C, G, H. A, C, G, H. So I'm just going to change the color, not the layer. Okay, so I'm now going to be highlighting this line, changing its weight to represent the marker between the bar chart and the resource histogram. So I'm going to be putting the resource histogram up here just so that it is easier to relate to what information is there. So this is our bar chart that we have done to satisfy the criteria for A. So bar chart done. Latest start time done. So this part is done. We use the latest start time for each of these activities. Note, we only have 3 activities that are rounding up at 27 weeks. So that's good. None has exceeded 27 weeks, so we are already good. So now for our histogram, I'm going to be copying this, putting it up here. What will be represented on our y-axis, so our resource histogram, is the number of equipment, or should I put amount of equipment? And the x will still be duration, so that is why I am able to put it one above the other. So I'm now going to go and label my y-axis, and that will be a number because it's representing the amount of equipment. Okay, so my y-axis is all labeled now, and I'm now ready to start my histogram. Have you subscribed as yet? Remember to click the subscribe button and the bell. So let's get into our resource histogram. This is a technique that is used in project management to provide a visual depiction of the distribution of resources to be used throughout a project. It gives an indication of the number of equipment as well as the timeline during which the equipment will be used. So it's a very good tool to use to get that visual representation of what exactly is going on in a project. So here we go for our network project. But before we get there, to make our life a little easier, what I'm going to be doing is to label each of these activity bars to show the number of equipment for each activity so that it's easy for us to do the tabulation. Again, it's good practice to go and check to make sure that what you have is accurate so that it avoids you having to redo something later or get errors in your calculations. Okay, great. So let's now get into doing our histogram. So basically what our histogram will be representing is, like we said, the amount of equipment that's needed by each week. Also remember, each of these slots represent 1 week. And so for us to determine how much equipment is needed, we are going to be looking at each column to see how many equipment is being used in that week. So for example, for A, we see that for this entire period, we only have activity A, and so only 2 equipment will be used for that time. However, when we get to like over here, we are seeing where we have 4 equipment being used for this activity and 2 equipment for this activity within the same week. And so to represent that, we would have to add these 2. I'll demonstrate that when we get there. So now let's get to drawing our histogram. So we go line, and our white line here is representing our 0. So we go up 2 and we go across for how much ever weeks this 2 equipment spans for, and we see that it stops there, so we're good right there. Then now we look for the next activity going forward, and it's 4 equipment, and there's no other activity taking place with this one, so it's just 4. So we go up to 4 and then we take it to the span, which is right here. Now this is what I'm talking about. So in this week, we're seeing where 2 activities are taking place, activity B and activity G. Activity B is using 3 equipment while activity G is using 2. So that adds up to 5. So we go up to 5 here and we bring it across to as long as that is the situation. So it ends here, so we stop right here. Then we look at our other activities. So we're seeing that now activity B has ended, but activity F has started, and it's using 4 equipment while G is still continuing and it's using 2 equipment. So 4 plus 2 gives you 6 at this point. So we bring it up 1 to 6. And then this is the case over to this point. So we bring 6 up to that point. Then we see where in this week we have 3 activities taking place. Activity E, F, and G. Activity E is 3 equipment, F 4, G 2. So we add those. 3 plus 3, 3 plus 4, 7 plus 2, 9. So for this week, and that only That's only the case for this 1 week. So we go up 9. Then we come back down and we assess. So 9 is here, so we went up 1. So that's right there for 9. Okay, so for the next week that's coming up, which is this week, we see where 4 activities are taking place at the same time. So let's add the number of equipment each is using. 4 plus 3, 7 plus 4, 11, plus 2, 13 equipment being used in this week. And that remains the case from here to here. So for a 2-week span, 13 equipment is being seen. So you're going up to 13 and then span a 2 weeks period. Then we come back down to our bar chart. And for the remaining weeks, we have 3 activities with 1 being 4, equipment 1, 2, 1, using 1. So that is 4 plus 2, 6 plus 1, 7. So that means we come down to 7. From 13, we come down to 7. And then, that's a line there. And then for the remaining 2 weeks, that we are at 7. So we bring it across for 2 weeks, and then we close our histogram. And that is representing the information that is in this bar chart. So now I'm just going to be using extend, selecting this line as my boundary, and then clicking the lines to extend them. And this is finishing off our histogram. And there you have your histogram based on the information requested from question A. So let's go to see if we did what was requested. We were to do a bar chart, we did. We were to do a resource histogram, we did. And it was to represent the latest start times for each activity, and we did. So that means for question 5A, we have done all the things that were required of us. So that means we now need to go over to B. So what I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be copying this so that in supplying the response, you can easily use that as question A rather than highlighting what is A. You just leave that B as the response to question A, and then I'll be working on this one for my response to question B. So let's see what question B requires of us. It says using resource smoothing, schedule the start of each activity so that only 8 mixers are utilized each week. The project should not exceed 27 weeks. So let's go again to specifying, and I'm going to be putting it back to gonna be using the purple color again as I did up there, and I'm going to be highlighting. So they need us to use resource smoothing. They want us to make sure that only 8 mixers are used, only 8 equipment. And the project should not exceed 27 weeks. So those are the important points, or those are the important things that we are pulling from this question that we need to zoom in on and make sure that we follow this to the requirement. So let me just change this back to by layer. Okay, good. So we're looking at resource smoothing. What is resource smoothing? Well, this is another technique that is used in project management where there is a constraint put in place where the resources for the project are concerned. Now, of importance, the timeline of the project should not be extended or should not change, but what will happen is the resources will be reallocated so that they are within a certain constraint that is given. Now, for this question, the constraint is that there should only be 8 mixers used each week. So we have to assess our resource histogram to ensure that no week exceeds 8 mixers. In a situation where we find that happening, what we will have to do is to apply resource smoothing. And I'm going to show you how to do that. Now, the other constraint that you're seeing is that the project should not exceed 27 weeks. So that goes with what resource smoothing is. It's a reallocation of resources without changing the timeline or the end time for the project. So let's get to it. So remember, we have this copied. Now, one of the first things I'm going to be doing is to mark where our constraint is. So I'm going to just be putting it in a different color. We don't need to mark where the constraint is for duration because the project already ends on 27 weeks. So when we assess our resource histogram, we are recognizing that for a 3-week period, the number of equipment needed exceeds 8, which is what is the maximum for this project. So we are going to have to go in and assess our resource histogram to see, based on the earliest start time and latest start time, how we can shift activities to ensure that we are within the constraint specified. So let's look at it. So we see these in red because these fall part of the critical path. We cannot touch these. These are untouchables. So we are not even looking at those. We're going to be assessing our other activities to see how we can adjust them so that the project remains within the constraints. So let's look at activity B. We started it at its latest start time, which is 13 weeks. And another key thing that we have to bear in mind for this is that we must look at the predecessors, those activities that are predecessors of another. We wouldn't want to rearrange the diagram in such a way that our predecessors end up falling after activities it should really be coming before. So let's assess B. So B is starting at 13. However, B's early start is on week 4. So let's assess. If I move B over to week 4 here, I will see that it will be 3 plus 4 to give me 7, and that falls within the constraint. So let me shift it over and see what happens. Now I need to go back to my network to see A is a predecessor of B, so that is good. We have it following A. B comes after A, so that is good. We are matching that. And then now let's see which activity B is a predecessor for, activity or activities. So we see that B is a predecessor for F and for E. So let's see. So B is a predecessor for E and for F. So let's see where E and F fall. So E is here and F is here. So it is still occurring before, so we are still good. Now let's see if we can shift any other to match that. All right, so let's look at D, for example. D lasts for 2 weeks and there are 4 equipment being used here. If we put it here, and let's see if D is a predecessor of any activity. Yes, D is a predecessor of J. So we have to be careful how we move D because it's a predecessor of J, and J also has a predecessor of E. So however we take it, E must fall before J. So let's go back. So we can't move J just yet. If I move E and E, B is E's predecessor. So if I move E right here after B has occurred, and let's look for the earliest start time of E, we have it at 10. The earliest start time for E is in fact 10, so we are good to go. So E fits perfectly right there, and let's do our sum. 4 here plus 3, that's 7. So that fits within the constraint. Now let's assess and see if we need to be moving any other activity. So we have 2 here for these weeks, 7 here, 7 here as well. This is 2 to this point, 6 to this point. No. Let's look at this. We have 4 plus 4, 8 plus 2, 10. So we need to do some shifting here. So we have activity D that can be shifted and activity F. Activity D is a predecessor of J. And activity F is not a predecessor of any activity. So activity F, earliest start, is day 10. So let's see. If I move F over to day 13, it would work because it's still within the time that it can start. And F, B is its predecessor, so it is fine because B ends here, so it is fine. F is not a predecessor of any activity, so I think at this point it is looking good. So we could leave it at day 13. We could actually carry it all the way up to day 15, and so it would end at day 23. So your diagram, your resource smoothing, there is not just a one simple way of solving it or redistributing the equipment. It's just to make sure that you're within the constraint. So that's fine right there. So let's check. This is 6 here all the way to here, 2 here, 6, and this ends up being 3. So with this new arrangement, we are within the constraint. Let's just make sure once again that everything is according to the specifications and we did not put any activity before the time it should occur. So let's go again. All right, so we seem to be good. So let's now review our resource histogram to ensure that it follows what we have in this bar chart down here. So we have, this remains at 2. We have 7 here. So we bring this up to 7. I'm just going to be selecting both. So it goes once, up to 7, and 7 goes to this point. Let's ensure, yes, 7 goes to that point, but 7 actually goes all the way out here. 7 actually goes all the way out to here. 4 plus 3 here, but then 4 plus 3 here as well. Good. So I move this up. Then I have here being 6. So I'll just move this up to 6. And 6 continues all the way over to here. So here's where 6 ends. And then for the other 2 weeks, it is 2 equipment. So 2 equipment here, good. And then here, it is 6 equipment for these 2 weeks. Again, I'm just going to select both vertical and horizontal lines so that they move all together. That falls on 6, yes. So 6 comes to this point, and then thereafter 3. It goes right there and right there. Okay, good. So we have basically met all the criteria for part B of question 5. So did we do resource smoothing? Yes. We ensured that all the resources were distributed so that none of them exceeded the constraint, which is 8. There we go. And it still maintained the 27-week mark. 27, there you go. Now, let me just say, you may do this question and you may have a different resource smoothing diagram than I do, because there is not necessarily a one set answer of how to get the diagram. I'm going to show you one I did earlier. This is the one I did earlier. You would recognize that it looks different from this one, but they're both correct. They both met the criteria of remaining within the constraint, and they were accurately depicting the different scheduling. So there are more than one ways to get to Kingston, as persons would normally say. So don't feel like this is the only way that you could have produced a solution for this question. If you saw another way where you could go ahead and arrange or adjust the activities within the constraint and ensuring that no predecessor falls before an activity it shouldn't, then you can go right ahead, because as long as you meet all the criteria, your answer will be accurate. So, have you hit that subscribe button yet? Remember to subscribe, remember to like and share this video, especially now at critical time where persons are preparing for the exams. Share the video so that you can assist someone else who is doing the same subject or the same topic. Thank you guys, and see you in my next video. Be safe, take care.